We're going to be exposing the United Nations and some major end time moves they're making. Family, the United Nations are positioning themselves to take over after the rapture of the church once the restrainer is removed. I do have a warning. The following information is not suitable for anyone who would like to remain blind. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, family, let's start this video by looking at some recent United Nations headlines that are going to prove the point I'm talking about today. You know, on this channel, we look at headlines, compare them to the Bible, and I report them to you. And family, these headlines are going to show you United Nations is making some major end time moves. Okay, look at this headline, July 4th, from the Federalist. The UN is planning to seize global emergency powers with Biden's support. Okay, the next headline comes from Fox, and this one is wild. AI humanoid robots hold UN press conference, say they could be more effective and efficient than world leaders. And family, this last one takes the cake right here. UN Summit of the Future will set the stage for a new global order in 2024. Family, let's get right into this. So the United Nations has some key meetings coming up in 2023 and 2024. And both meetings will take place in September, around the time of Feast of Trumpets, and are major end time moves for the United Nations, as the United Nations is positioning itself to take over at some point after the rapture of the church, after the restrainer is removed, the ecclesia. So from September 18th to the 19th, 2023, the United Nations will hold its SDG Summit in New York City. So the 2023 SDG Summit will take place from September 18th to the 19th, 2023 in New York City. And it will mark the beginning of a new phase of accelerated progress towards sustainable development goals with high-level political guidance on transformative and accelerated actions leading up to 2030, also known as Agenda 2030. And the leader of the United Nations is saying the SDG Summit in September will be a moment of unity to provide a renewed impetus and accelerated actions for reaching the SDGs. Now, for those that don't know, the SDGs are 17 goals the United Nations want to achieve by 2030. It's the Beast System wish list, also known as Agenda 2030. You can pause this video and look on your screen right here. These are the 17 goals they're wanting to achieve. And while some of them look good on paper, they're not what they appear to be. But it's the meeting in September 2024 that I think is going to be the major power move. The meeting from September 22nd to the 23rd in 2024 could give the UN sweeping powers that has caught my eye and set them up to position themselves to be the key dominant figure after the rapture of the church. So in September 2024, less than 2 months before the next U.S. presidential election, the United Nations will host a landmark Summit of the Future where member nations will adopt a pact for the future. And this agreement will solidify numerous policy reforms offered by the UN over the past 2 years as part of its Sweeping Our Common Agenda platform. Now, many details of the UN Emergency Platform were laid out in March of 2023, a policy paper titled Strengthening the International Response to a Complex Global Shocks and an Emergency Platform. In the paper, the UN Secretary General wrote this: I propose that the General Assembly provide the Secretary General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale, severity, and reach. Now, family, listen to this next part. This is really important. Once triggered, the emergency platform will give the United Nations the ability to actively promote and drive an international response that places the principles of equity and solidarity at the center of its work. The United Nations would bring together the stakeholders of the world. Family, you hear that? Stakeholders, okay? Including academics, governments, private sectors, and international financial institutions to ensure there is a unified global response to the crisis. Now, family, did you notice the stakeholders of the world would come together? Who are these stakeholders? They're the global elite. And what I found to be very interesting, on the United Nations website, it gives examples of where these emergency powers would come in. Well, family, remember what happened in 2020? What popped off in 2020? If it happened again, the United Nations would be in control of it with the help of the WHO. But another example the United Nations gave was a threat from outer space, like the rapture cover-up. Where you think they're going to say all the Christians went, all these people disappeared? The rapture cover-up. So if there's ever an invasion from outer space, hey, the UN will have our back. Whatever, family, it's all a ploy. The United Nations is positioning itself to take over after the rapture of the church. Family, I call it the unholy trinity of the World Economic Forum, the WHO, and the United Nations. These emergency powers that the United Nations is wanting to obtain starting in September of 2024 is so that they can be the key figure, the leaders after the rapture of the church to push the one world government, the Antichrist system. And family, if they obtain this power, we're only one false flag, one event away from the United Nations taking its positions as the leaders of this world, family. All I can really say is keep on looking up, guys. We're going home soon.